When you're shopping or making an appointment with your doctor, have you noticed the chatbots that have been popping up lately? On this CG Hour, we're going to dive into the topic of how AI agents are impacting the retail and healthcare industries. Let's start the countdown. To the CG Hour. My name is Fanny Dunnigan, where every episode we come to you featuring industry leaders, business experts, tech leaders sharing their latest insights and advice and examples of the latest hot business and tech topics. So thank you for joining us live on YouTube as well as LinkedIn. Be sure to introduce yourself in the comments of the feed and tell people where you're tuning in from, introduce yourself, and I challenge you to connect with at least 3 new people in the feed and build your network as well. So today we're going to talk all around how AI agents are impacting the retail and healthcare industries. And I'm joined by an amazing panel of guests. I'm going to start here on my left with Aamer. Aamer, please let everyone know a little bit about yourself. You are the head of machine learning at Best Buy, as well as the president at Dallas AI. But share a little bit about your career, Aamer.
Thanks, Fanny. So like Fanny mentioned, Aamer Charania. I have had the pleasure of applying machine learning and AI to a variety of industry verticals, including retail, financial services, healthcare, telecom, technology, and airlines. All along, my passion has been AI. That's what I love to do. I also love to learn and love to share what I learned. So happy to be here. Finally, one more point to make sure my legal friends are happy. Any thoughts I share here are my own. Doesn't represent Best Buy, Dallas AI, or any other entity that I have been associated with. Thank you.
Thank you, Aamer. And then on my right, we have Leonard, SVP of Digital Marketing at CG Infinity. Jeremy, if you could share a little bit about your career.
Great, thanks, Fanny. Yeah, you know, when we think about chatbots and the technology behind it, I always think about customer experience. And I got into the digital media space back in '99 when I jokingly say Google was in beta and dinosaurs walked the earth. And you know, worked in the digital agency world for about 17 years. And then moved over to consulting about 8 years ago with a strong focus on media, MarTech, and customer experience. And clearly AI is having a big impact on that. And I'm very fortunate to you know, help run our Denver office.
Yeah. And last but not least, Nayan Patel. Nayan is the CIO at Upson Hospital. Welcome, Nayan. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I'm the CIO at Upson Regional Medical Center. It's a small hospital in central Georgia. My background has actually been in semiconductors as well as healthcare IT. So the last 20 has been in healthcare IT. And I think what is really interesting today is, you know, when we talk about AI, it's all about process improvement. When you think about what we do, and so my career has spanned over, you know, different areas, including semiconductors. I mentioned I was in telecom, but for healthcare, there's so many operational improvements that we can do, and that's where AI comes into play. And we'll talk about some good use cases of how we've been able to apply that.
It's going to be an exciting episode. For those of you out there, it's all around retail and healthcare. So get your questions ready and feel free to comment along as we go. First off, I want to kind of share about the current landscape and get everyone's perspective of what you think where we are now. Maybe Jeremy, if we can start with you. As far as the current usage of chatbots and AI agents, where do you kind of see that usage right now in retail or healthcare?
I was at a healthcare information management show 2 weeks ago, a group I think Nayan's associated with, and someone there got the same question. They said, well, right now it's a hot mess. and I think it's that may be extreme, but I think it's because we're moving from human-powered chat and some basic algorithmic chat and basic machine learning chat over to actual AI, generative AI, right? And we're in that middle section. So I think sometimes when we go back and we work with some of the older chat technology right now, it feels stilted, right? A little stumpy. It doesn't quite get there because we're already starting to get used to working with much more fluent AI tools. So we're in a very odd place right now that are conversational in nature, yeah. So I think from a tech perspective, it feels like we have 1 foot on the boat and 1 foot on the dock right now.
Yeah. Nayan, from the healthcare perspective, where are you seeing the current usage of AI or chatbots?
I think it's a little bit of what Jeremy indicated. I mean, it's incrementally getting there. And that's why it's a hot mess, if you want to call it that. We're trying to find selective areas where it can be applied. We're not at a point where we can say, okay, this is exactly what we need in these different areas. Obviously, you've probably heard of appointment reminders and even scheduling an appointment from a healthcare perspective. Those are easy ones that have been automated through chatbots, but are better now because they're actually trying to have a real conversation of, why you're scheduling this, getting more information to make it more meaningful. So, yeah, I think we're going to get there in terms of utilizing the technology better in selective places. And I'll always say it's going to be iterative. We're not going to go this big bang because the industry can't understand and consume it that way.
Especially healthcare.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. For those of you, how many of you out there have started to schedule appointments with your doctors through chatbots or AI agents? Let us know in the comments. Aamer, from your perspective, in the retail space, right? We all shop. We all go online to shop. Where are you seeing the current usage of AI chatbots in retail?
Sure. So Fanny, you mentioned we all shop. I hope we all shop at Best Buy.
I was just there this weekend.
Great, thank you. So we go with the philosophy, and I say I represent the retail industry, right? It's all about improving the customer experience and efficiencies. Now I know the moment I say efficiency, things like cost cutting, compromising on customer experience comes to mind. But true efficiency is you improve the experience and you are able to do more with the current resources. Some examples like healthcare. Instead of appointment scheduling, I would say support. That's an area where chatbots have helped a lot and will continue to. Specifically to retail, improving search experience, helping consumers find things faster. Another area where AI has helped and will continue to help in future.
Absolutely, those searches. And thank you for those of you joining in. We can see them all coming in now. Lacey from Frisco, Kiefer from California, welcome to the show. Let us know what chatbots you guys are interacting with when you're in healthcare or shopping in retail. Jeremy, from your standpoint, what do you think are the business challenges or pain points that are driving this need for some automation of shopping experiences or healthcare, or perspectives from like driving that need in healthcare to be more efficient as well?
I think healthcare has suffered with staffing challenges from time immemorial almost. I mean, it always feels that way. And I think from the healthcare perspective, from the healthcare provider, certainly there are things like follow-ups and scheduling and all the things that we think that are essential for the systems to run. And I think from the healthcare provider's perspective, that's where we see AI jumping in. What I think is going to be interesting is to see what role the patients expect it to play. In other words, are they expecting AI to jump up and provide a diagnosis, right? Or to be a second opinion to their own doctor, right? So, if you've gone in and gotten a diagnosis and say, well, I would like a second opinion. Now are you going out to WebMD, but WebMD on AI? Or are you actually going to get a second opinion? So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what role the clinicians expect AI to play in the system versus what role patients expect it to play. And I think there may be a little bit of conflict there. Hopefully, I think what will happen, whether it's a rural hospital or an urban hospital, is AI will take some of that load of the more administrative items off of the day-to-day clinicians. Then I think this morning I was catching up and I saw that hopefully one of the applications would be around billing and insurance. And I thought, well, it can't get worse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when it comes to billing and insurance, so hopefully AI will help us punch through that a little bit.
And you mentioned one use case this morning around your local city of Denver, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really find this fascinating from a linguistic perspective, right? I mean, this is very much a country of immigrants, and Denver just fired up an AI bot to help with city services called Sunny. And not only, of course, the 24/7 access, but the fact that it has 72 languages, right?
Amazing.
I know, 72 languages. So, if I'm in Texas and on the Gulf Coast and I need someone at 2 a.m. that speaks Vietnamese,
Yeah.
well, an AI chatbot is a perfect application to that, right? And I think that's really one of the upsides. There's clearly some downsides and some watch-outs we'll be talking about later, but I think the 24/7 availability and the linguistic access are amazing advantages to jump on right away.
Yeah, I'll actually
Nayan?
just jump off of something he said. So I happened to go to a college university graduation 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that we all witness is everybody's names being announced, right, as they cross the stage to get their diploma or pseudo diploma. And one of the schools, because each school within the college gets to do their announcements any way they want, one of the schools actually used an AI engine to announce the names. So phonetically, it was a lot more accurate, and nobody had to kind of guess, So from a language standpoint, there's so many benefits, right? Because you have a tool that knows how to read a name, or maybe understands where the name is from, has the ability to learn how to pronounce it, and can, as best as possible, enunciate it correctly. And so I thought that was
voice sound robotic, or did it sound natural?
They said it was pretty good. And so I wasn't there. This is, I was there for my daughter's graduation, and she was saying, but the other school, they did this because hers didn't. And most of them, was fine, but you could tell some of the people, because they try to share that responsibility with some of the key professors and the chairs of the departments. And not all of them are quite up to speed on language of pronunciation. So yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits. Now, in terms of actual, clinical care, I think this is really where it comes down to. Clinical care is about, taking care of the patient, and how can AI help with that? I'll actually spin it a little bit. AI is a little bit of IA. It's intelligence automation, right? So you got all this intelligence that's out there, and how can you make it useful? And from a clinical care, it's labor compression. Take the easy stuff off of me, the repetitive tasks, those different things that if I could just use somebody or a different tool to use that, we call it a digital worker, right? That's what we're building out, these digital workers that can now take care of that functions so that the clinician, whether it's a nurse or physician, can better focus their time and energy on the actual patient care.
Love that term, intelligence augmented. Yes. Aamer, from your perspective, right, what are the business challenges or pain points that's driving AI agents in retail?
Sure. By the way, great examples there. From retail side, specifically from electronic side, I would say the complexity of products is increasing. I'll give a personal example. Over last weekend, I had to change my media room receiver, the audio video receiver. Now, I'm an old guy. There was a time when if you want to change the AV receiver, you just replace 4 wires, left speaker, right speaker, video, and power. Now, there are like 10 different wires, like 8 speakers, this, that. I did all that. I tested it. Guess what? The video is coming in, but no audio. My kids were laughing, Dad, you're a technologist, you couldn't figure it out. After some trial and error, it turned out that it was not the speaker wires, it was my HDMI cable that was like 5 years old and couldn't handle the 8K bandwidth that it needed, and it was choking off the audio. The point is that this information was somewhere in the manual. I didn't read 50 pages of manual, and I wouldn't want consumers to do that either. That's where these chatbots can help. That, okay, this is my problem, right? Tell me how can I solve it? And that's where I feel AI can excel. Gathering, compressing large amounts of information and putting it in a way that's human friendly.
Such a great example because there's so much tech gadgets these days. Yeah, and you're right, no one's going to read the manual.
Exactly, yeah.
How efficient that would be to just kind of like ask and then the answer's there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, from our audience, I see Joel Dollar saying the current customer service AI bots can be very frustrating. Companies should be careful to test the customer journey and optimize along the way. Do you see that happening right now, Jeremy, as far as a frustrating customer journey with the current state of chatbots?
I do, and you know, we talked about it in the very beginning, where it feels like we've got one foot on the boat and one foot on the dock. Okay, and Joel actually likes to boat, so he'll appreciate that. But with that said, I think it's because we're still moving back and forth between not only technologies but fundamental foundational issues. So you can get into, and when I say an older chat technology, it's what, 12 months old? You know, I mean, when we say older these days, right, we're measuring these things in months, not years. And it's the escalation path is unclear. It doesn't necessarily have access, as Aamer was speaking of a moment ago, in retail, to the ratings and the reviews and the technical manual and everything, right, to concatenate all that knowledge and information in one place. So it can feel very bumpy along the way. And then all of a sudden you move over to something that is really well trained, and it's trained on the proper large language model. And to Joel's point, I think they've kept the customer experience in mind, and it feels incredibly smooth. I would speculate that we're about to run into a new version of, you know, the old Amazon issue, whereas Amazon made shopping so easy with literally one click, and that raised the expectations for every retailer, and I think raised customer experience even in healthcare. We're very quickly going to expect that level of seamless integration and communication with the chatbots in, what, 6 months? 8 months?
Yeah.
It's going to be fast.
I think
Accelerating.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you're really bringing up a good point. Everything we do is a service, regardless of which industry you're in. And the level of service expected now is much higher, faster, quicker, right? And so you are utilizing the different types of solutions that are out there to serve us better. And the question is, are we, the consumer, satisfied? Another example, and this is kind of retail oriented, I needed to cancel a internet service this morning. Actually, I went out to the website and I clicked, and a chatbot popped up, and you know, I figured I had to talk to somebody. Like, okay, this is when I want it done, and I didn't trust it yet, right, 100%. But I'm like, but it said one quick thing said is, hey, you know, do you want to wait, or who do you want to contact, or can we schedule a time to call you? And I'm like, perfect, just call me at this, you know, and it said, can we call you at between 4 and 4:30?
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that's great. I didn't have to wait. I didn't think it. And they'll call me somewhere in that time. I'll be expecting it. I'll get the person, whoever I need to. Hopefully by that point they're finding the right person. And so what the learning lesson here is, it's satisfying, but it's also, you know, some of the things that you can do with voice AI now is they'll be able to say, and you know, if you call a number, an 800 number or whatever service, and it'll say, do you want to talk to an agent, a chat agent, or do you want to wait 3 to 5 minutes? And giving that option to the consumer is really where it comes down to, because a lot of consumers are like, yeah, this might work for me. It's not for everybody, but you still have that option, and how you implement these options incrementally is going to get us there. Now, maybe at some point it'll all be automated, but we're not there yet. But having these options is going to continue to engage the consumers.
But you bring up a really good point that even if it's not addressed immediately, they gave a time slot when it will be addressed. So it kind of satisfied that need for a solution, even if it's a delayed solution.
Yeah, and I wasn't in a rush. It fit my need, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so in healthcare, what are kind of existing use cases that you see around AI agents right now?
I think the biggest one, and some of you probably already witness it, from appointment reminders to reminders for your medications. These are things that are built into the tools today. And part of it is it's because from a healthcare perspective, we lose money if we don't get those patients to come see us, right? Whether it's a follow-up visit because we have 30-day readmission issues, that's a big one, that if you go back to the hospital within 30 days of a service, Medicare won't get reimbursed, okay? There's, real financial implications there. No-shows for appointments, okay? That's a big one, right? And then there's always, 5-10% of people who don't show up for whatever the reasons are. But this is where AI can help us saying, why are these people not showing up? They can look up, is it because the area code which they're coming from? Is it a distance issue, or is there something else? They don't have transportation, or is it time of the day? Whatever the factors might be, because each of these things actually do have a financial impact. And so those are two critical use cases right now. I mean, we'll talk about some more here in a bit.
Yeah. I mean, Aamer, from the retail side, and whether it's Best Buy or any kind of provider, what are successful use cases that you've seen so far around chatbots and AI agents in retail?
Sure. So we already talked about the support area. That's where we are seeing tremendous benefits, right? It helps the customer 24/7 ask questions, helps the companies get more efficient. Other areas that we have seen is around personalization. Generating content that is personalized to individuals. The whole idea is improve experience, help them search products faster. Okay. Another angle that we always keep in mind is the customers are used to the experience provided by our search engines, whether it's Google, Bing.
Yes.
They don't care whether they are shopping at Best Buy, Walmart, Amazon. As they are searching, many of those are also interacting with ChatGPT. They want the same experience with the retailers. That's what we're all trying to provide. Lastly, when I say personalization, it's not something new. We have been doing it for quite a few years, right? But at the level of segmentation, that we have this segment of population that likes this, we have that, right? And we'll say, okay, Fanny belongs to this segment, Aamer belongs to that segment. But now with AI and with data, we have the ability to go granular at the individual level. That's where I see tons of opportunities.
Absolutely. And then we end up buying more, right? Like if they know I'm
Hopefully.
always buying jackets at Ann Taylor, they're going to suggest more jackets to me, right?
We see it as it would make the experience better for Fanny.
Thank you. Yes, a better customer experience. Nayan, I want to point out a question we got in the feed here from Mudal. He asked, given the sensitive nature of patient data, what measurements are in place to ensure the security and privacy of information managed by AI agents in healthcare?
Well, so that's a huge one, right? I mean, so one of the things that will always be done is it's going to be a recommendation based on what would be public information. There will be no PHI that can be shared. I think just from a legal standpoint,
explain for those that
PHI
don't
is
know.
patient health information or protected health information. So that could be anything related that's identifiable to an individual, whether it's what we call ADT, admit, discharge, transfer information, because that's what those are the key feeds that you need from when you're going to take one service of procedure to another location or within the hospital. And so that might be address information. It could be, many different identifiers. So there are, qualifications out there, and we need to protect that based on the HIPAA privacy law, which is HIPAA, Health Information Protected Accountability Act. And so there are a lot of protections that have to be placed. And I think that's where there's a lot of reservation in healthcare, to use any type of AI, because there is concern not only from release of information, but providing the wrong type of recommendation, right? As you mentioned, I think one of you said, if you're going to go to WebMD and now you're going to use the WebMD AI version to kind of give you a potential second opinion, how much do you want to trust, or is that even allowed? So there are, prompt engineers now in place to essentially define and limit really what should be provided and put those guardrails in place.
And in a way, retail and healthcare are kind of different gradients of the spectrum.
Very
right?
different.
You can recommend a piece of clothing and it's no big deal, but recommending a diagnosis or a treatment is a totally different game.
Yeah. And so it'll always be a recommendation, and please check with your actual physician provider or get some actual clinical assistance in person with your provider.
Well, we want to share with you some research that we pulled together around statistics and facts and figures around the impact of AI agents in retail as well as healthcare. So let's roll that now.
How will AI agents impact retail and healthcare? Let's dive in. AI agents are entities designed to perceive their environment and take actions in order to achieve specific goals. The very first chatbot was released in 1966. And with the demand for personalization, AI has become the key enabler in fostering better customer experiences. The best approach for challenger brands is to develop a data and tech roadmap tied to specific customer-driven use cases. So what about AI agents in healthcare? The global healthcare AI market is expected to reach $188 billion by 2030. 6 in 10 adults say they would feel uncomfortable if their doctor relied on AI to do things like diagnose disease and recommend treatments. But healthcare AI agents can address nurse shortages and help patients with follow-ups, pre-op check-ins, post-op checkups, and routine tasks. So what about AI agents in retail? 63% of retailers use AI to improve customer interactions, with 40% dedicating teams and budgets to the technology. 57% of buyers are comfortable with AI in e-commerce if businesses maintain transparency. And AI agents can suggest products by examining client data, such as browsing patterns, past purchases, and demographics. What do you think will be the future of AI agents?
We're seeing tons of great comments and questions in the feeds here. I want to acknowledge Bob Stillwell in the comments about personalization is great within retail as it's tailoring services and products to consumers that they might not realize they want. However, in healthcare, this same personalization might risk HIPAA and patient data issues, and I think Nayan addressed that very well earlier. Jeremy, from your perspective, let's look towards the future now, right?
Yep.
And like exciting developments and innovations. You mentioned a really interesting tool, an AI agent that you saw for healthcare. Can you describe a bit to the audience?
Yeah, I feel like the jury's still out on this a little bit, but Hippocratic AI is a company out there right now. They've gotten some funding, importantly some funding from NVIDIA, but they're talking about providing AI nurses where you can actually choose the style of communication, the face, the race, the ethnicity, obviously the language skills. Do you want someone who's direct with you? Do you want someone who's more empathetic? Now, look, in real life, I mean, I would love this, trust me, I would, but you know what I want and what I need may be two different things, right? I need someone to get me off high center with my fitness sometimes or my nutrition, But it's going to be fascinating. Again, the Healthcare Information Management show I was at recently, and I know Nayan's involved, there was a lot of discussion about that, and a lot of folks like, this feels like it's too far too fast. Maybe the emphasis is on the too fast because, again, nursing shortage, chronic issue. At some point, I have to think that there are healthcare organizations and facilities that are going to say, look, in a pinch, do we want to have nothing? Or do we want to go with, an AI nurse on someone's computer screen that they feel comfortable with? It's I'm going to absolutely keep an eye on that.
And it's almost like the consumer will decide.
I
Right?
think
there can
that's-
be lots of innovations, but the consumer will decide.
Yeah, and I feel I certainly feel like as AI is already moving out of things like scheduling and reminders, right, and post-procedure follow-up into, oh, here's your nurse on your phone or your digital device. The concerns that I think a lot of us have in the space are going to become a reality faster than we think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Aamer, what new, I mean, you're the president of Dallas AI. You're mixing with a lot of experts nowadays in AI. What are some new innovations or exciting developments you see in retail around chatbots and agents?
Sure. So, thanks to generative AI, we feel that AI models are now getting much smarter in understanding the context behind. Specific example, there were times when people would put 70-inch Samsung TV. Now, people are putting, I want a large screen TV to watch a game on. Okay. Translation, I want a TV that is 80 plus, and that 80 changes with time. A few years ago it was 60 plus. I want a TV that is high resolution, suitable to watch a game. And lastly, right, something that has better color contrast, right? That to me is even a simpler example. Tomorrow, there will be things like, I'm moving to a new place, my media room size is this, recommend me products. Think of it as having a conversation with a human partner that says, okay, this is the context behind, and that context could be very, very abstract. It is the job of a good AI agent to understand that and give the right information to the consumer.
Absolutely. Nayan, I have a question for you. We have a registered nurse in the feed, okay?
All right.
And so from that perspective, Angie Trejo, actually a good friend of mine. So in clinical healthcare, one fear is replacing individuals with AI, especially nurses, right? From a nursing perspective, using AI for administrative tasks could be helpful, but a bedside nurse just cannot be replaced.
And I don't think that'll ever be the objective. I think the human element is always going to be part of clinical care. I don't think that nurses have anything to really worry about. What they really they care about is making sure the right type of care is provided. I think we're talking about use cases, and from a clinician standpoint, whether it's a physician or a nurse, you may have heard of ambient listening now, right? So we're working through.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so we're actually working through, the health industry in general is working through putting ambient listening into a patient-doctor visit. And so when they're having this conversation, just like we are today, the AI tool is listening to the whole thing. And at the same time, you turn it on and say, okay, listen to the conversation, start documenting. And it will document your physical history and physical information. So we could be talking, for 10 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever it might be, and it is going to now put that into the main electronic health record system, or EMR, electronic medical record system. Those go interchangeably. And so the tools out there now are saying, hey, this is great. And then what it does at the end of the visit, the physician has to document, right? He has to put his physician note together and start recommending things. And it's smart enough to know that, oh, you were talking about football. It ignored all that, right? Your favorite teams, the scores, anything, the weather, your children, whatever was not relevant. So the AI tools, the large language models, they're smart enough to kind of interpret it just like a human would. And then the key thing here though is it's still human required at the end, right? That human interaction is required. And the physician note is, one hospital is actually starting to implement this in California, where they are not, they're ensuring that human element is there, because they're going to say the physician note, it says start with blank or start with draft, right? It's just a draft. You, the physician, still own the accountability. So the draft might say, okay, here's what I said, here's everything, what the patient said, they're experiencing, pain in their left knee, or, emotion going, their temperature goes up and down, or whatever it might be. And so the draft will have all that in there summarized in a nice way, but it will also saying, physician, you are still held accountable for that to happen. So for physicians and nurses, I think both, it's a supplement. This is all about having them less clicks to do, because nursing is so stressed right now. Nursing, compared to physicians also, I think they are unsung heroes in that sense, because they do so much more that, to get the patient where they need to be for the final clinical care of in some cases for procedures that have to happen.
I mean, Jeremy, where do you kind of see that delineation? So up to this point would be AI agents, and then from this point onwards would be human. I'm putting you on the spot.
No, it's a great question. And I think when we think about things like ambient listening that Nayan was speaking about a moment ago, it addresses, I think, a fantastic criticism I've heard in the past, which is that in the moment, physicians or clinicians spent so much time actually documenting, they weren't actually engaging with the patient, right? They weren't watching body language, they weren't listening. I shouldn't say they weren't listening, that's not fair, but they were split, right? Their attention was divided, and I think what's going to happen, I think ambient listening and note taking is amazing. I think most of us who use any sort of, video technology for calls and meetings these days, we all have AI tools that can just transcribe the meeting, right? We can go through very quickly and delegate the work, send the notes off, things like that. I think the concern of a lot of folks is certainly when does someone say, I'm just going to hit enter and send the notes off, right? I mean,
they won't let you. Yeah, and the tools, we're putting controls in place so that it doesn't do that.
Right. So I think in a lot of different areas. I mean, I'll give you a very good example. Several months ago, I started using an AI search engine called Perplexity. I really like it. I think it's terrific. And one of the reasons I like it is because it gives you the documents that it has pulled from. Okay, so here the seven or eight.
Source.
The 7 or 8 source documents are right there. They're immediate. You can go to them. And when I started using it, I told myself I was going to check those source documents all the time for hallucination, confabulation, a few other things. I really don't check them that often. I got to tell you.
It's hard to.
Right.
You have trust now.
Yeah, I have a certain amount of trust.
Right.
So, I think one of the things we all have to watch out for is, I think just as human beings, we're all looking for the path of least resistance, right? We all have a tremendous amount of work that's put on us, whether you're managing a retail store or a large retail chain, or you're a clinician or a hospital manager, a consultant. And it's just, I fear, to your point, it's not going to be a big bang, right? It's going to be one little bit at a time that we start just sort of transferring the trust over, saying, that answer looks right. It's probably right.
I do want to expand a little bit on what you were talking about, and related to the ambient listening and what physicians get out of this, right? So from a time perspective, they have actually said it still takes a good solid 30 seconds to do proper documentation with some automated functions, the shortcuts, the words and all that. And then with this new AI tool that they had in place, it's still the same time. So the difference, they said, for the physicians was, do they want to use this? Because it's not really saving them time. In this particular case, of some of that listening and documentation from the previous type of archaic chatbots or automation efforts. But they all wanted it because two things. One, they actually said the word choices that ended up putting into the draft were more empathetic than they would have chosen. Okay, so they that was one thing.
They trained the bot to be empathetic.
Yeah, and so it's using better choice words, and that can also then be used for communication to the patient. But the second piece was it alleviated them from cognitive thinking of what they needed to write. So meaning by the end of the day, when they've already done, several patients, tens of patients or hundreds, I don't know how some people see a lot, but all these patients that they've done, and then they do all that documentation at the end of the day, their brains are just tired of extra thinking and documenting. But by the end of this, they felt better. They weren't as emotionally drained. So cognitively, they were happier physicians. And so that was a key component. That was, again, not a time saving, not getting rid of their job, but helping them, with that burnout, which you hear about, nurses as well as physician burnout.
I mean, Aamer, from your perspective, where do you kind of see that line of in retail, right? What would people be comfortable with for AI agents? And then when would people need the humans in retail?
Yeah, I feel that depends on two things, the use case and also the individual themselves. So I'll unpack a little bit here. The use case could be, I want to consult with a physician. It will take us some time for AI agents to be as smart as having that conversation with the individual. They can certainly help, right? Gather information for the physician and so on. In retail perspective, it could be an example where it could help our agents get more productive, see the whole spectrum, get the information about the product, and help the consumer. So in the case of my, let's say, media room AV replacement, right? If I call an agent, right, she or he should be able to quickly pull that information. This is the product, this is the issue, combine it. The other would also be the individual themselves. Some people like that automation. They don't want to wait 2 minutes for a live agent. In fact, in the case of healthcare, sometimes people are reluctant to share everything, especially when it comes to therapy. I was just doing a segment on AI therapy for a local TV station here, and we had a great conversation about it not only helps, but it also makes people open up more. Now, will it ever
If
replace?
it's an agent?
Yeah, if it's an agent, right? Will it ever replace therapists? No. A therapist will always be needed, but it can make therapists more efficient because some segment, not everybody, may be more open to sharing. All in all, I think the theme here is that AI will never replace humans. It would just make them more productive, more efficient to solve more complex problems and leave the easier ones to these AI agents.
Absolutely. Now, we've heard a lot of different terms here, AI hallucinations, AI confabulations, and obviously there's AI biases. So we wanted to put together a video for you by Jeremy here, sharing about the definitions around all these different terms you're hearing. So let's play that now.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Leonard, Senior Vice President of Digital Marketing with CG Infinity. And today we're going to be talking about the use of AI agents in both retail and healthcare. But before we discuss the use of artificial intelligence agents, let's discuss 3 issues that we need to keep in mind. Those of hallucinations, confabulation, and biases. So let's start with AI hallucinations. Hallucinations are when AI provides you with an answer that is false, misleading, or fabricated. A good example is I recently used ChatGPT to look up the anniversary of the explosion of Mount St. Helens. While it provided me with the accurate date, it also informed me that President Truman was killed in the explosion. I happen to know that's not true, and most of us know that's not true. But if you're not an expert in the field that you're querying AI about, you may not know that. And so it's important to look at the underlying source data and documents that AI is pulling from. When AI has an incomplete fact set, it can start to fabricate information or data out of whole cloth to try and provide you with a cohesive answer. Next, let's talk about AI confabulation. Confabulation occurs when an artificial intelligence agent has information or data to provide you with 80% of the answer, but it wants to provide you with 100%. So it can actually fabricate data to fill in those gaps. Unfortunately, it won't tell you what it's doing. A good example is recently someone used AI and were querying information about the construction of the Eiffel Tower. In so doing, they asked how many rivets were used in the construction of the Eiffel Tower. The answer was 7,300,000. Sounds reasonable. Unfortunately, there's actually no record of how many rivets were used in the construction. So the more that we're relying on the accuracy of an answer that an AI agent has provided us, the more we need to look at the underlying data, sources, and information AI is pulling from to ensure that in fact confabulation is not occurring. So let's talk about the last issue, that of bias in artificial intelligence. Bias may be one of the most difficult areas to extricate from artificial intelligence because it really comes from two areas. One is the people who actually design the algorithms, and two is the data with which the algorithms are trained. So let's use one example that's fairly well known, and that is the use of artificial intelligence in facial recognition. Facial recognition systems tend to work poorly with people of color. And they work poorly with people of color because the systems were not designed by people of color, and the underlying data doesn't include enough samples of people of color when training accuracy in artificial intelligence. So again, looking at the people who design the systems and the underlying data upon which the systems are trained is critical to understand where the biases exist in AI.
Jeremy, thank you for those explanations. I certainly, especially the word confabulation.
Right.
That really helped kind of set the stage for that.
Yeah.
I have a question here, a very
Yeah.
interesting question from Rudal in the feed here. He's part of a small biotechnology company currently in the research phase. And they are exploring the use of AI tools such as ChatGPT Plus and Claude AI to gain insights during their research. Now, if they make a groundbreaking discovery with the assistance of these AI tools, do you think they can file a patent for that innovation?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think literally and figuratively the jury is still out on that. But I think here's the things to look at. Similar questions arose 15 to 20 years ago when people were using open source code, right? They were creating software built with open source code. Well, wait, you guys didn't own the code, right? That was open source. But the end product ended up being patentable. And then last year we saw that Screen Actors Guild and writers went out on strike. AI was a big part of that. And at least the first courts that came back said, you know what? If the studios are using AI to create something, the studios can't own that created product in the end because the AI created it. So all of a sudden, wait, then who does own it, right? Is that public domain? So I have to think that there are some very intelligent, copyright and patent attorneys out there right now, drawing lines in the sand, saying this is how we're going to argue this in court. Literally and figuratively, I think the jury is still out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the second part of that question I want to direct to you, Nayan. He continues to ask, furthermore, what measures are in place to ensure that our data remains confidential and not used to train the AI models, so safeguarding the proprietary nature of their research?
And there's probably not a good answer to that too, right? Because there's a lot of legal implications on what you can and can't provide. Now, we do a lot of data sharing with public records, and we anonymize the data. So if we're trying to actually build something that says, hey, we have a population here in this part of town that has high propensity for diabetes, okay? Yeah, we might be able to say, okay, this is their average age or approximate ages and their weights and heights, and we look at the zip codes that they're from, so we know what their food capability or reach is. But you have to remove any identifiable patient information on there and then put a broad set of information. So anonymizing the data is going to be key to providing some of this to large language models that are using it for actual healthcare analysis. But that is going to be where we, the healthcare organizations, have to be very careful in who we partner with, because we're partnering with a lot of people. And so now I've never had to read contracts as much as I do now, and I look at that indemnification clause, right? that indemnification is where we could be, sued for whatever different things. And so, yeah, trying to go through that with every partner now has been interesting.
Can I jump in on this
please.
for a minute? Yeah, I think the issue of AI governance is really going to be fascinating. And I will plug our firm, CG Infinity. We have a great team in the area of AI governance. But just a few years ago, so sort of prior to ChatGPT, maybe 2 years before that rolled out, I was working with a large financial services firm. And they brought in a large marketing technology firm that we would all recognize, and it was around personalization, right? And I think as consumers and as marketers, we always think about one-to-one marketing, personalized marketing being the holy grail. And I was in the meeting when this financial services firm said, okay, well, tell me how the decision was made to offer that personalized interest rate to this individual, but a different interest rate to that individual. Okay, this gets back to zip codes, and the nefarious side of that we've known for years is called redlining. Now, the folks from the marketing technology firm.
Tell people what redlining
well,
is.
redlining is certainly a history in financial services. It could be banking, could be insurance, could be a variety of things, where folks look at a map and say, look, we've got lower income folks here or high risk folks here. We're going to charge them higher prices on insurance or higher rates on their loans. Unfortunately, there's a very strong correlation with race, right? And then not just other things, but so as I sat there listening to this marketing technology firm explain it, they're very excited to say, but that's the amazing part. It's a black box. You don't know how the decision was made. And the financial services firm said, I don't think you understand, fair lending laws. We have to be able to explain why this individual was offered a lower interest rate than that individual. And the tech guys literally walked into this hornet's nest around a long and unfortunate history that we have in this country sometimes, right, of redlining and using existing data, but using it in such a way that only continues, it perpetuates a system where some parts of a neighborhood or a city or the country get offered higher interest rates, right, if they're offered a loan at all, based off history. And I touched on bias in that thing.
It's the AI bias.
Right, that's that bias where we really, really have to keep a careful eye on that, because the AI algorithm is just working with the data that it was trained on, right? There's no moral.
If it's biased data,
if it's biased
results.
data, right, or if it was taught to interpret it in a biased fashion. It's a really key thing.
I'll quickly add to that, two very interesting themes here. The earlier theme on patents, as somebody who has filed many patents, I would say go for it. I have seen time and again, right, that when I wait, right, I see somebody has filed that patent, so no harm in filing. It takes a while, right, and let the USPTO decide whether it's worth it or not. On the other side, on the data side, absolutely. I'll just add that in some cases, the red lines are very well defined. Loan decisions. It took financial industry years, I have been in their industry, to come up with those rules. And they have done a very good job in protecting the consumer, but at the same time, leverage the innovation. I think in healthcare, there is a lot more opportunity. My wife is in oncology, and she deals with some very sick patients, sometimes in ICUs, and now you might be aware, right, and go to ICU, all you hear is tat, hundreds of devices, right, making those noises. That is untapped data. Okay. Things that we can leverage to help the physicians come up with better treatment plans. The challenge is there is not much governance around it. Who takes the liability? Is it the electronic manufacturer? Is it the hospital? Is it the physician? There's something else. We got to come up with those and come up with those faster, because the data is just increasing.
Data governance is very hard.
Yeah.
Especially
and
in
I
the
wonder
healthcare
if it
environment.
boils down to whoever is the most transparent and upfront wins, because the consumer then feels that they can trust them because of the transparency? I don't know, it's a question.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's where I've seen companies that use generative AI, when they put down there, this content is being generated by AI, consumers tend to trust them more.
Yeah, I just wonder though. I mean, because when we get to these issues, and I had the chance to speak with a woman who's in charge of cybersecurity and data and AI governance for an assisted living chain recently, and she kind of rubbed her forehead, and said, "Oh, we're trying to contractually delegate these issues of AI governance to our vendors." And I thought, at the end of the day, it's not the consumer, but it's the consumer's attorney. And the consumer's attorney is going to look around and they're going to say, where's the money and who has the biggest insurance policy? And it's not that little AI startup in Silicon Valley, right? It's going to be a large national chain of stores or healthcare facilities, and that's probably, I think, where they're going to go. It's the consumer's attorney in the end who's going to decide where the target is.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of dive a little deeper here, because Nayan, earlier you brought about the fact that different hospitals, different sizes, different budgets, right? So as we kind of move towards the future of AI agents, let's say in healthcare, do you see any kind of bias or disproportion between institutions that can afford maybe enterprise AI packages versus those that might be in more rural areas that can't afford that?
Oh, there's going to be a huge difference. So, I mean, and that's just based on obviously financial and resources, but it's also human resources. The people who are available to work in certain markets are different than other markets. Okay, I mean, that's just, we live here in the DFW Metroplex. This is a mecca for technology, organizations, funding, a lot of different things that happen here. And then with that, you will be part of some large healthcare systems. Okay, there are two big players here in town, and there are multi hospitals, 50, 60 hospitals in some cases. And that's tens of thousands of people that are involved, right? Now, if you're part of a single hospital system, you just don't have the resources capable to continue to leverage that. And so they have more funding, the large healthcare systems, certainly, to be able to take advantage of AI, and try and trial and error. I think we know about automated cars, right? And we're going to run into the same thing here. There's going to be a few accidents along the way. There will be hallucinations that are going to happen. Yeah. And that's why it's slowly, iteratively making and utilizing the different parts of AI that are available and implementing them into our environment. But it'll be a learning process as we go.
Now, Aamer, earlier on, you also touched around different generations, right? You have, my son and my daughter, let's say, that would rather just kind of not talk to anybody and just buy everything online and use AI agents. But then you might have different generations that still want advice, recommendations, that human-to-human interaction. So how do you kind of account for the different generations have different needs?
Yeah, and that's where I feel that data and AI together can help both the consumers as well as the companies a lot, because they can do the hard work of that individualized personalization. Also, I want to add this to the earlier point. I feel that there will be some economies of scale for companies to adapt these things, but then with technology, it will gradually be more like a level playing field. So what I'm getting at is that these technologies will not be limited to the large companies. There was a time when mainframes were limited to only a few large companies. Then there was an era where data centers was a huge investment. And if you want to do something big, you got to invest in huge data centers. That limited the leveraging of these technologies to few companies. Now, thanks to our cloud providers, somebody in a garage can open up a cluster of 1,000 GPUs and solve something, as long as they are solving something valuable. Now, I can imagine, right, industries would differ, right? In healthcare, there are some learning curve right, and it would be hard for rural hospitals to compete with the urban ones. But I think as we go more and more further and these things become mainstream, the gap will reduce. And it's all about innovation. Who can solve that problem first? Technology will become a commodity.
And there is actually funding available for rural hospitals through government funding and grants. And so a lot of the organizations just need to be aware that the government is actually trying to level the playing field as much as possible, but you have to take advantage of some of these available grants.
Well, as you can all see in the audience, there are probably more questions than answers these days, but then things are just moving so quickly. So be sure to connect with all our panel of experts here, Nayan, Patel, Leonard, as well as Aamer, Charania, and connect with them, and we will go through all the questions that we saw because we couldn't address all of them here and make sure that they get answered. But thank you, Nayan, Jeremy, as well as Aamer, for your insights, your perspectives. I think this will definitely be a debate or a discussion that will be ongoing for decades, probably.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I do want to call out next month, actually, no, I take that back, August. We will have an episode around sports betting and the data and analytics behind that. So something fun for the August month there. And we want to share with you a video as we wrap up here of some of the happenings of our sponsor, CG Infinity, things that have happened throughout the first half of the year. So as we kind of wrap up here, I'm reminded of the great tagline of our sponsor, People First, Driven to Transform. So I invite you to watch this video as we wrap up and enjoy.